Hello, fellow RoboCapitalists. Hope you're well. So I took a break from my painting job, moving offices, to give you guys an emergency update. I just looked at a chart of the 2-year Treasury yield after hours, and it is collapsing. And I am talking about falling straight out of bed. I'm talking about the Wile E. Coyote moment. That chart that we used for the thumbnail, that's the actual chart of the 2-year Treasury yield right now. So let's check it out. And for those of you who are new to the channel, I'll connect the dots and tell you why this is so important in terms of predicting when we'll have a recession and if we will have a hard landing or a soft landing. So first and foremost, let's get right over to a chart of the 2-year Treasury yield. And look at this. And you think it was, oh, well, George, it's about Jerome Powell. It's about Jerome Powell. No, he was talking about, he was talking before the market closed. And Josh, when did he start talking? Can you pull that up Eastern time? And so that would have been right around here. So right around here, we were at, call it 4.3. I mean, even up to 4.38, almost 4.39. And then let me just see if we can go to a one-day chart. Look at this. So I would assume this is Eastern time. So 2 o'clock, and that would have been right when the Fed was speaking. So basically when they get done. And then, of course, when would after hours start? I don't know if this is my time or if this is Eastern time. I can go here and find out. So that would be 6, that would be 4, that would be 5. That's, this might not be updated. Let me just refresh. Go to a one-day chart. Jeez. Can't accuse me of clickbait on this one. Look at that. Just straight down. And I mean, it's not like this is one of those zero hedge charts where it's down like 3 basis points, but they just cram it together and like zoom out to make it seem like it's a huge crash. Look at this. Down 12 basis points regardless of the Eastern time, Pacific time, within the span of from 1420, so that's 220 to, so within 2 hours, it's down 13 or 14 basis points. The 2-year Treasury. I mean, that would be a huge move for the 30-year Treasury, let alone the 2-year. Oh, but wait, there is more. Let's look at what the 10-year is doing. In fact, I did a video just a few hours ago where I was talking about how the 10-year Treasury yield is crashing as well. And that's because it had gone from, I think, what was it, 4.25 down to 4.09. And this was just a couple hours ago. Look where it is now. Same looking chart. It's down to 4.03. I mean, we could very well wake up tomorrow and the 10-year Treasury will be trading at sub 4%. So let's just do the math. Right now, we've got the 10-year at 4.03. So let me write this down here. As you guys know, I barely graduated from high school, so not that good at math. But even I can subtract whatever the 10-year is, or whatever the 2-year is from the 10-year. So we've got 4.03. We've got 4.25, call it. So you're at 22 basis points. So the 10-year is still dropping faster, although within the last couple hours, the 2-year is doing its best to catch up. So the last couple of hours, the 2-year is down, call it 13 basis points, where the 10-year is down, call it 9. Wow. Just big, big moves. And I really want to go back just a week or so. Remember when we were hearing all of these or seeing all of these reports and articles come out from the mainstream media? And a lot of the talking heads, a lot of the experts on FinTwit as well, saying, oh, the yield curve is dead. Oh, the yield curve is dead. And I actually put out a tweet saying, isn't this ironic that they're sitting there claiming this time it's different, the yield curve is dead, while at the exact same time, we're seeing this huge bull steepener, which would imply the yield curve is not dead. The yield curve is spot on. It has been spot on for the last 2 years. You can never time it. You know, people sit there and say, oh, well, it's been 2 years and the yield curve has been inverted. Therefore, it's invalidated. It doesn't work anymore. Oh, you have to, that argument, as you can tell, frustrates the hell out of me because it's just weak thinking. You have to look at what the inversion is telling you about what market participants and what financial institutions are doing with their money and with their balance sheet capacity. Forget what they say on Bloomberg. Let's watch it. Let's take a look at what they actually do with their balance sheet capacity. And when they have been loading up on 10-year treasuries, well, I'd like to point out the Treasury, Janet Yellen herself, has been issuing massive amounts of treasuries. Massive amounts. Why? Because you guys know the deficits have exploded. The U.S. debt has gone from 22 trillion in 2019 to over, I think it just hit over 35 the other day. So think about that increase in the amount of debt. Well, what does that mean? That means we have $13 trillion more treasuries today than we did in 2019. Yet yields are crashing with all that supply. So what does that tell you about what financial institutions are doing with their balance sheet capacity? Are they lending out into the real economy because they see a tight labor market and they see an economy running on all 8 cylinders? Or, you know what? I wrote down some notes when I was listening to Jerome Powell. I was eating lunch today after that video, and I took down some notes. So Jerome Powell was sitting there saying that, oh, a year ago, we had to look at our dual mandate, but we had to prioritize inflation. But now that we've got inflation down, we can kind of add an equal weight to the unemployment level and the inflation rate, as if the Phillips curve is still a thing. I mean, come on. These are the smartest people that we can find to implement monetary policy, and they're defaulting back to the Phillips curve that was completely and totally debunked by the inflation of the 1970s. I mean, guys, that was 50 years. You think that Joe Biden is like Weekend at Bernie's. The Phillips curve is like Weekend at Bernie's. The thing just won't go away, even though it's been proven wrong over and over and over and over and over again. And if you guys don't know what the Phillips curve is, that's the belief that there's a direct relationship between the rate of inflation and the unemployment rate. So if you want to get inflation down, well, you've got to get unemployment up, and then inflation will come down. Or if you've got, low levels of inflation, or you got to get the unemployment rate down, or so, you drop interest rates so the unemployment rate goes down, more jobs, more aggregate demand. But it's just time. Like, when has there been a time when this actually works? Yet for some reason, they just going back to the well, as if no one has even noticed that it doesn't work. So therefore, we can just keep claiming that it does. It's like the emperor wearing no clothes, but it's just in the form of some sort of economic model. Really unbelievable. So that was the first thing. But then he's talking about the progress that they have made on inflation. Remember, if you guys watched the earlier video, I told you they're going to take credit for this nonsense. But then what they say is it's an unusual cycle on the fact that the inflation rate has come down, even though the unemployment rate hasn't gone up that much. Again, defaulting back to the insanity of the Phillips curve. But what this proves is that they didn't have anything to do with it. They defeat their own argument just later on in the speech. They contradict each other. They contradict themselves over and over and over again. So what am I referring to specifically? Okay, fine. Let's say that the Fed has made progress. Well, if the Fed has made progress and the yield curve is a thing, then there's no way that inflation rate could come down if the unemployment rate didn't spike to 7, 8, 9%. See, one of these doesn't fit, Jerome Powell. You've got to choose. You can't be responsible for it, but yet have a cycle that's unlike any other that we've ever seen before, where inflation has actually come down without the unemployment rate spiking. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the unemployment had nothing to do, the unemployment rate being low, had nothing to do with the consumer price inflation. It was mostly supply side driven by the government locking everyone in a cage for 2 years and destroying the global supply chains. Shocker, you throw a little stimmy checks on there and you get consumer price inflation as though we're somehow surprised. Unbelievable. Anyway, getting back to this. Why are we so hyper focused on the yield curve and not just the yield curve uninverting? Because I hear many people in podcast land talk about the steepener. Well, the curve is going to steepen out. The curve is going to steepen out. Oh, okay, well, what do you mean by that? There's a couple different ways that it can steepen out. And based on how it steepens out, that's two completely separate outcomes that you would expect. So we've got the bear steepener, which is the long end of the curve going up faster than the front end of the curve. Or we've got the bull steepener, which is what a lot of people have been predicting over the last 3 months. And every single time I see this on the channel, I'm like, what are you talking? How do you get to that? How do you get from A to B? How do you connect those dots? How do you put those pieces of the puzzle together to where your base case is a bear steepener? It just, again, to me, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. My money was always on the bull steepener. I've been saying that till I'm blue in the face on this channel. You guys know that. So the bull steepener is the bad type of steepener because that is the market predicting that the Fed is going to drop sooner than they're telling you and faster than they're telling you. And what they're seeing out there in real economy land is actually the opposite of what the Fed's telling you. The economy is not on fire. The economy is doing very, very poorly. And therefore, those financial institutions, instead of lending out to the real economy, taking risk to where they could get a higher yield, they're pulling back and saying, no, we're taking that balance sheet capacity and putting it into treasuries. Because at least, even if it doesn't keep up with the rate of inflation, at least we know we're going to get our principal back. And if we use that balance sheet capacity to go out into the real economy, we don't even know if we're going to get our principal back. Because things look that bad. That's just the tip of the iceberg, but that's the main thing that these interest rate curves, the yield with the treasuries, that's the main thing they're telling you. And we just see it playing out just dramatically, especially today, right in front of our eyes. Now let's go over to the 2-year, 10-year spread. And you guys, again, will see why I've been pounding the table on this and why, even for the last 2 years, I've been like, look, you can go into the stock market, you can go to the house, do all you want, but just understand that you're playing with fire. You're playing with fire. And that's why I have had call options. This isn't investing advice, just giving you guys the details as to one of the portfolios I have set up. That's why I've had call options on the NASDAQ. Because, yeah, the stock market can go up when bad news is good news. But you just don't know when the flip is going to switch, or when the switch is going to flip, and you're going to go from bad news being good news to bad news being bad news. And then they take the stairs up and the elevator down. So that's another reason why I've had T-bills. So if it goes down, you got the liquidity. It goes up, you have a crack up, boom, boom. You get the upside with those call options that you're using the interest on the treasuries for. But anyway, getting back to this, again, why I've been pounding the table here, look at the gray shaded areas. We got the inversion, and then what happens? Uninversion, not just an uninversion due to a bull steepener, guys. You go back, and you can take this all the way back to the 1950s, and you're going to see the same type of pattern. You have an inversion, time, uninversion, recession. Over and over and over and over and over again. And I'd like to point out that every single time you see that pattern, there might have been maybe one exception here because it got really little weird at the end of the 1970s. But 95% of the time, you're seeing that uninversion as a result, or the sustained uninversion, where it really spikes and gets steep as a result of the Fed dropping rates, not because they want to, not because they've achieved a soft landing, but because they have to, because they're behind the curve and they're responding to a crisis that they claim nobody could have predicted. And 95% of the time, that is the bull steepener, which is what we're seeing play out right now. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, make sure that you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. See you in the next video.